To realize the future America needs, we understand what's needed from us to face each threat head on. We've earned our place in the fight for our nation's future. We are Marines. We were made for this.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like aloe or skins, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. With Shop Pay, that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts are going abandoned and way more sales happening. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whatever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Skins uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we once again open the mailbag to take more questions from our listeners. We got some great ones earlier this week in our first mailbag segment, and I have to hand it to you, our listeners. Really came out strong for this one because we've got another really good round of questions in this episode, looking at some possible extensions for the Orioles, as well as a little bit of prospect talk, and again, discussing about Brandon Hyde's status and future as manager of the Orioles. We could not avoid that topic this week. But I want to start off with a what-if question that I'm honestly surprised has not come up before now on our show. And it comes from KTG TV. A two-parter assuming Bobby Witt Jr. also wouldn't sign an extension with the Orioles. If you could go back to the 2019 draft and all the Orioles picks after number one stayed the same, would you still draft Adley or would you draft Bobby Witt? Part two of this question is, if you could go back to the 2019 draft and some picks after number one changed, maybe some are the same, but I would assume most are different, would you draft Adley or would you draft Witt? Nick, I'm going to start with you here, and I'll just say that I feel like whatever we answer is going to piss off half of our listeners. So I'll just let you start that.
There was that one guy like very early on in our podcast existence that every single time Adley did anything good, any Adley tweet, he responded with Bobby Witt is better, or some variation of just that one-liner. So this reminded me of that guy. I hope he's doing well. It's easy to get frustrated and say like the Orioles should have drafted Witt, especially after just watching the Royals beat the Orioles and watch Witt do Witt things and see him become who he is. Baseball is more beautiful and better because Bobby Witt is great. And I hope when it's all said and done, I can look back at least at his career and say we got to watch one of the greatest to ever do it. I'm still 100% Adley, though. I just think because of hindsight, it's very difficult to go back and put yourself in the 2019 shoes. It is nearly impossible. But going into that draft, like Adley was an elite player on an NCAA championship team. He was an elite player on the national stage for Team USA collegiate team. Like he was the best of the best at some of the top levels, amateur levels. And I also feel like he's a catcher. Like, you're entering this super long rebuild that you're tearing down to the studs. He's a catcher. Maybe you keep him in the minors a little bit longer. He can be a leader in all of these minor league clubhouses because he's again, he's done it on the biggest stage possible for an amateur player up to that point. He can be a leader in these clubhouses as he moves up the ranks, and he makes the pitchers that he works with better as he climbs up the ranks. And, maybe ideally you start working with these guys and they come up through the system together. And now you've got Adley with a group of arms that know each other like the back of their hands. And it all makes this transition to the big leagues easier. Of course, injuries happen, things happen, maybe derailed some of that, but I don't know. He was as polished as they come as a college player, and you knew you were preparing for this long rebuild, and I still think Adley was the correct pick, regardless of the situation.
Yeah, that's a tough question, because I think people underrate Adley still. I mean, yeah, he had a bad second half of 2024 and a slow start to 2025, but honestly, he's got a lot more red in his Savant page than he did last year. His BABIP is like 233, so he's not had the luck. His approach is back to what it was 2022, 2023, where he's walking more and still striking out not much. Like, I think it's just a matter I think he's the guy that we want him to be. It's just a matter of the numbers indicating that. Would it be awesome to have a left side of the infield with Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt together? Yeah, it would. But then I don't know. Then you wouldn't have Jordan Westberg. Maybe Kirby Mayo wouldn't be potentially a big as part of your future. I don't know. If you start doing ifs and at the time, 2019, there's no world where I'm taking Bobby Witt over Adley Rutschman. So it's only in hindsight that you could potentially say you'll take Witt over Adley. I don't know. He's going to put up the better numbers. He's going to get you more highlight reels, but I still think Adley has a lot of value to this team as a well above average catcher, leader in the clubhouse. Like, I don't know. And if you extend him, he's a guy that's probably going to get a statue, or at least a big part of Orioles history down the line. So, gun to my head, I'll keep things the same.
Yeah, I would keep the things the same for two reasons. One of them is that I agree with both of you. If you go back to 2019, that was the correct pick at that time. And I actually remember the fall before, when we were, Bob and I were at Baltimore Sports and Life. I actually wrote a piece over there. And at that point, I said that I preferred Witt over Rutschman. And then as we got into the spring that year, I ended up flipping to Rutschman, because I just felt like, for a franchise that was in the very early stages of the rebuild, he was the more surefire building block than Witt was. And I still believe that to be true. The other reason that I wouldn't do things over is that it still all sort of worked out in the end. You got Gunnar Henderson in the same draft. He's going to be neck and neck with Bobby Witt Jr. for most of his career, I suspect. You still ended up with Jordan Westberg. Kobe Mayo, if things pan out with him, you still ended up with him. The point is, you covered the left side of the infield. You made up for the fact that you didn't have Bobby Witt. So, is it possible that 5 years from now you're going to look back and say, hands down, the Orioles should have taken Witt? Yes, but I also think that Adley is going to get back on track here eventually, and this conversation probably won't be happening much, if at all.
It's always going to happen. Like I said, I'm glad they're both painted out to be great MLB players. Another question from Bobby says, what would an extension for Tomoyuki Sugano and Ryan O'Hearn look like? Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, Sugano would be an interesting little extension. He's looked good, and especially his last few times out, getting more strikeouts, the splitter looks really good. Maybe getting more comfortable on the 5-day schedule and pitching in the majors. And we'll see how he does in the heat. Hopefully he doesn't cramp up too much, but I would be down for like a similar, maybe not the same deal that I'd be happy to extend to Zach Eflin at this point, but maybe like a tack on 2 years, $30 million to his deal. I think I'd be comfortable with that at this point. And for Ryan O'Hearn, I don't know. Like, he's been awesome. Like, he's fine. I feel like this year he's putting the best of 2023 and 2024 combined, and he's walking more, striking out less, but hitting the ball hard and getting extra base hits, and he should be the everyday first baseman, and or at least splitting first base and DH with Kobe Mayo, and Ryan Mountcastle should go away. But I don't know if I would extend him. Maybe a 1 year, like one more year, 10 million. But maybe he deserves to hit the open market. Maybe I would trade him if we need a reboot. That's a guy you could trade with some value, and then maybe re-sign him for a 1 or 2 year deal in the offseason if your wants and needs align going into 2026. But yeah, Sugano I'd be more open to for sure.
Yeah, Sugano, I think a 2-year deal right around that price tag that you mentioned, Bob, would make sense. Given his age, I wouldn't be as comfortable committing as much to him in terms of years or dollars as I would Zach Eflin. But I would consider Sugano if he continues to pitch this well. And then for O'Hearn, where I'm a little bit torn is that we have seen O'Hearn kind of have peaks and valleys in his performances over the last 2 years. Unfortunately, the good parts have outweighed the bad, but he'll go through his cold stretches. With that said, I like what he's doing this year. And if the Orioles made the qualifying offer to him and he accepted it at this rate, I'd be very happy with that outcome. So 1 year deal where you have to overpay a little bit to keep him around, I think would be ideal. If you've got to do a 2-year deal, I would consider that, but I wouldn't go a whole lot more because keep in mind, he's going to be 32 in July. So this is not a young player that broke out. This is someone who realistically, is not a long-term guy that you're going to commit 5-7 years to. Nowhere near that.
Yeah, I almost wonder if Sugano, I agree. I think he could be a good guy to plug into the back end of your rotation for the next couple of years. It's not like he's been throwing, 95 plus miles per hour in Japan all these years. He's more, obviously, the more command guy, so his arm should hold up a little bit longer. I'm fine with that. With O'Hearn, I would almost prefer if you try to maybe package him with some low level like DSL prospects, some high ceiling younger teenage prospects, and see what kind of deal you could get. Because I feel like he would be in demand come the trade deadline. And you've got Dylan Beavers, as we're talking about. If Dylan Beavers is going to continue on this trend, that's a left-handed bat who can play some outfield. I don't know if Beavers has played any first base down in the minor leagues up to this point, but you've got Samuel Basayo coming up. He plays a fantastic first base, and of course can DH for you when he's not behind the plate. So I'm a lot more comfortable with O'Hearn leaving. I'm not going to hate if he returns, but yeah, Sugano I think makes the most sense of the two.
No first base for Dylan Beavers in 2025. He did play 13 games there last year in AA, but none so far this year. Let's see. Next question is going to come from EJ, who asks, who is the best Orioles prospect you would part with in a realistic trade for a starting pitcher? Or, to put it another way, are there any Orioles prospects that would be off the table for you when looking to address the starting pitcher's woes mid-season? Zach?
So I go back to a hypothetical trade that a listener asked us about over the offseason, and it was, would you give up Kobe Mayo if it meant you could get Logan Webb from the Giants? And I said yes, that I would, because I think Webb has maybe 3 years of team control, including this year, or 3 beyond this year. I'm not sure which, but regardless, multiple years of control for a really good pitcher. With the way the Giants are playing, though, that is no longer a realistic possibility. So it would probably be lower than Mayo now. I would say the top prospect that realistically I would be the most comfortable giving up with the pitchers that I expect to be available. It's going to be Enrique Bradfield Jr. or Vance Honeycutt. One of those two, but ideally not both. And then as far as who is untouchable, Samuel Basayo is untouchable. I think that's kind of established by this point. And I think Mayo, if he performs well during this call-up, even if it is a short-term move, moves into that category because now you start to think, are you basically subtracting from the Major League roster by trading Mayo to get a starting pitcher? Yeah, you get a starter, but you're making another area of your team weaker in the process. You don't want to do that. It's kind of the argument against trading Jordan Westburg would now apply to Mayo. So maybe Mayo's not all the way there yet in terms of being untouchable, but he's getting close.
I think for me, that point does make a lot of sense there about Mayo. For me, I just think Basayo would probably be the only untouchable, just because, as we mentioned, I don't want to call him franchise altering. That's too much. But as we've talked about a lot, like, he could be the face of the Baltimore Orioles across Latin America. Kids in the DR are going to grow up idolizing Basayo. They're going to be an Oriole just like Basayo. The Orioles as an organization are going to garner a lot more respect in that market as they try to build that pipeline, especially if the Orioles decide to lock him down sometime soon. But I think this organization needs Basayo to become a star in Baltimore for many reasons that aren't just wins and losses at the major league level. So I would say, honestly, just Basayo. If you move Mayo, like, I need something big. I do need that Logan Webb type arm. And like you said, the Giants, that's the difficult thing with the trade questions going on right now. It's like a lot of teams and a lot of arms, like, they're clearly coming off the market. Like, even like a Dylan Cease. Do the Padres decide to move on from Cease? I think he's had some issues here lately, but like, the Padres are in this. Are they still going to move one of their starters for a bat? I doubt it. Like, I think the options are going to be pretty limited. So for this a midseason trade, I think that's the caveat there, where I would say, yeah, Mayo is probably untouchable as well, unless you're guaranteeing me a bona fide stud with multiple years of control, which I don't see how many of those arms are going to be available in the next 2 months.
Yeah, I think now at this point, I'm less willing to trade guys, because I think even Enrique Bradfield Jr., like, that is a personality I want in this clubhouse. That is like a potential face of the franchise personality type, and skills on the field as well. But I think before the season, you could have twisted my arm and I would have traded maybe Kirby Mayo in a Pablo Lopez type of deal. Now I'm not. I'm just not doing that. Basayo was always off limits. I think he's a stud and he should be here for his entire career, or at least sign him to the 15-year deal today. Dylan Beavers, again, like, I think I like Dylan Beavers more than Heston Kjerstad at this point, and never thought I'd say that, but here we are. I think, like I said on the previous mailbag episode earlier this week, Vance Honeycutt, yeah, I mean, I like what they've been able to do with him so far, but we've talked about before, he's a little bit more of a project, as Dylan Beavers was at some point too. I think I'm not trading McDermott or Brandon Young at this point, because we need those arms. That's for sure. So Honeycutt, Judd Fabian, I don't even want to trade him. Like, I'm just like, if we're going to be rebooting or not as sure about what we have, even if we do get back into it, I'm just less willing to trade these guys. I'm going to go deeper into the system. Creed Willems, Trace Bright. What can we get for those guys that need to be added to the 40-man in this offseason that still have value, rather than the guys that could be part of the extension of the core?
We'll go now to this question from Seth. If the season continues to go sideways, who might be the most surprising prospect to debut before 2026? Starting with Nick.
Surprising prospect. Realistically, I just have a hard time seeing a shocking name. Like, unless there's a lot of trading off of guys and multiple spots open up. I don't know. Like, if Beavers and Fabian stay, they need to be protected from the Rule 5 draft, so they may get shots, but that's not really surprising considering their status. Basayo, of course. Like, the easy answer, I guess, would be Braxton Bragg if he keeps dominating like this. But I would bet massive amounts of money, even if the season goes sideways, that they let him reach his innings cap in AAA and then shut him down before they would add him to the Major League roster this year. It's a boring answer. It's not fun at all, but I'm looking at guys like a Dylan Hyde or a Carlos Tavera. They need a reliever late in the year. Thank you for your years of service in the minor leagues and all of your hard work. Here's an MLB outing or two before we ultimately DFA you. Like, I don't know if I see any shocker coming up to the big leagues, especially if it's done this year.
Yeah, this isn't really the front office that's going to bring Jeff Fiorentino straight up from High Frederick. I don't think we're going to see that. Like, outside shot of Levi Wells, maybe Cameron Weston could definitely see that if he turns it around and they need an arm. But yeah, I was thinking like Keegan Gillies, who's for some reason still at Double HS peak, even though he is absolutely dominating and there's no excuse that he's not in AAA. Maybe he comes up and he proves to be an impact reliever at the major league level towards the end of the season, something like that.
Gillies is a good answer. Cameron Weston was going to be my guy, and the only reason that I think that's really surprising is that he is off to a little bit of a slow start. But as I said in our last show, there's a couple of pitchers that I think their numbers right now are better than what the back of the baseball card stats suggest. And I would put Weston in that group because he's had a few rough outings in a row, but after giving up home runs, I think in 2 or 3 straight starts, he's now gone 3 consecutive outings without giving up a home run. He's got a ground ball rate over 50%. The strikeout rate is good. So it feels like as the walks start to come down for him, he'll be fine. If you want to go with a real dark horse, I wouldn't rule out someone like Peter Van Loon, who's been around a while, can give you some bulk innings out of the bullpen. Yeah, he's down in Double-A. He had a cup of coffee in Norfolk at the end of April, but he's down in Double-A now. But I'd have to think if Norfolk needs an arm at some point in the next month or two out of the bullpen, Van Loon's a guy that you would promote. And again, if there's some sort of emergency type situation like what Nick talked about with Dylan Hyde or Carlos Tavera, I think Van Loon would apply there too.
You're going to get Jordan Adams. You're going to like it.
Yeah. I was going to say, how about Nolberth Romero? Just you need someone to fill in. He's your guy. He has been that guy.
Oh, boy. Then we've really spiraled.
Hiring shouldn't be a hassle or a drain on your budget. Upwork is your one-stop shop to find, hire, and pay top freelance talent, saving you time and keeping costs in check, all in one place. Do you know the secret to businesses that are scaling faster than ever? They're using Upwork to tap into a diverse pool of skilled freelancers across various industries. With more than 2 decades of experience, with a simple and ambitious goal, to pioneer a better way of working. Posting a job on Upwork is easy. No cost to join. You can register, browse freelancer profiles, get help drafting a post, or even book a consultation. From there, you connect with freelancers that get you and can easily hire them to take your business to the next level. Upwork makes the entire process easier, simpler, and more affordable with industry-low fees. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com to post your job for free and connect with the top talent ready to help your business grow. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com.
O'Reilly! You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
This is a mini meditation guided by Bombas. Repeat after me. I'm comfy. I'm cozy. I have 0 blisters on my toes. And that's because I wear Bombas, the softest socks, underwear, and t-shirts that give back. One purchased equals one donated. Now go to bombas.com/listen and use code LISTEN for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/listen and use code LISTEN at checkout.
Vivek's question here. Can we discuss cases of other teams that have gotten off to historically bad starts but still made the playoffs? Astros and Nationals, for example. Also discuss teams that even within their winning window failed to make the playoffs. There's a long list here of examples. The Padres recently, 2023 Mets, 2023 Yankees, 2021 and 2024 Blue Jays. Thoughts about these teams?
Yeah, I think it's a good perspective to have because when you're in this losing funk where it seems like nothing can go right, like even if this year is a wash, it doesn't mean the window's shut. It doesn't mean the rebuild was a failure and Elias should be fired. Like sometimes these things happen and there's not much you can do about it, especially with all the injuries. And yeah, there is still a chance for the team to turn it around. Like there is a lot of talent. The core is still really good for this team. Like if Gunnar is, I think over the past, all right, I did do the math here. Gunnar missed spring training pretty much completely. And since April 26th, which was about 4 weeks after starting his rehab with AAA Norfolk, basically a spring training around 4 weeks. Since April 26th, he's batting .371 with a .948 OPS, only striking out 16.2% of the time. So he's back in the mix of things. Adley's been unlucky. We've said it. Holiday is just breaking out. We've talked about if Westberg comes back healthy, Mayo can break out. Like there's definitely a chance that they could turn things around. But I kind of had this perspective Sunday. I was really probably the most upset I've been at the major league team after the Charlie Morton decision by Brandon Hyde. And it really pissed me off when I thought I couldn't be hurt anymore by this team this year. But then I turned on the Delmarva game afterwards. For some reason, I was still in the mood for some more low A baseball. And it actually gave me a decent perspective where I was like, all right, this is why we do this. Like we're focused on the minor leagues for a reason because this sport is a journey. You know, I like seeing these kids develop. So it kind of brought me back, you know, that optimism. That's what baseball is. There's like constantly optimism that there is potential hope in the future coming on the way. And need that right now more than ever.
Yeah, to go with Vivek's question, I'll focus on the second part because we did talk a little bit about the Astros and the Nats last week. I think if you want to look at parallels from the examples of teams that failed to make the playoffs during their winning window, the 2023 Yankees are one that jumps out because they were largely hurt by Aaron Judge, missing a lot of time with injuries. And as we've seen with the Yankees, since Aaron Judge arrived in the major leagues, as Aaron Judge goes, so go the Yankees. And when he's healthy and playing every day, they're a threat to win the World Series. He's producing an MVP level. When he's not in the lineup, that lineup looks very beatable. The mediocre pitching staff gets exposed, and all of a sudden they're really not the big bad Yankees anymore. If you wanted to take a different perspective, though, you could focus on the 2021 Padres and say there was a team that seemingly had all the pieces in place, and then just for whatever reason, the bottom fell out and they played horrible baseball in the second half. That ended up costing Jace Tingler his job as a manager. And if you're wondering right now, did I remember the name Jace Tingler off the top of my head? No. I pulled up Baseball Reference while Bob was talking because I couldn't remember his name. So Jace Tingler loses his job. Bob Melvin, I think, came in after that. And the Padres turned it around briefly before Bob Melvin didn't work again, and now we're just on this AJ Preller thing where just keep adding players until it somehow works. The Orioles don't operate that way, but there is an interesting parallel there with the Padres in that, again, the pieces were in place. And if you say that the Orioles slide really began in the second half of last year, you could see some similarities there.
I'm just reminiscing about Jace Tingler right now, and how much supposedly that clubhouse despised that man. It's just so hard for me to be optimistic. I want to talk about prospects. I want to talk about the draft. I want to talk about anything else. My rebuttal to some of those examples would be specifically like the Astros and Nationals, though. Like those teams, both those teams had something that the Orioles do not have, and that is pitching. And I know the Orioles' problem is way more the pitching, but that Astros team had Framber Valdez top 10 Cy Young season. Hunter Brown emerged as a dude. They got the one year that Ronald Blanco is ever going to have in Major League Baseball. I think he threw a no-hitter that year. I watched that game. I think it was 2024. Spencer Arrighetti was okay. He struck out a ton of dudes. Like he's perfectly fine back in the rotation. And they unlocked something in Yusei Kikuchi after that trade, and he was fantastic down the stretch. And that Nationals team had three guys, Strasburg, Patrick Corbin, and Max Scherzer, all finished top 11 in Cy Young voting. And I go back to Bob's last example about the Kyle Gibson thing. This team said Kyle Gibson's going to be the adult in the room now. He's pissing the bed. 2 starts now. And then this team sent out Charlie Morton in the 8th inning. And it's not a must-win game, but Bob just went over this. But I agree at that point right there it's not a must-win, but you've got a real chance to take this series against the Royals, make it back-to-back series wins finally, get some real momentum. Do you think that's the thing or not? Like, you send out Charlie Morton in the 8th inning. Like, no, that's my only thing here. It's that this team does not have that pitching that can match any of those teams. Again, like I mentioned before, we talked about this. The AL isn't as strong overall as it's been in the past. So maybe a weaker AL as a whole, expanded playoffs, you can sneak in. And as everyone is well aware of, the playoffs are a complete crapshoot. Even this Orioles team playing like this, getting into the playoffs, could suddenly turn it around and make some noise for a couple of weeks and win this thing. But it's just getting harder and harder for me to have the positive outlook, even with all of these examples sitting here in front of us.
No doubt about it. Mm-hmm. All right, so we got a little bit of like dueling pianists here from The Bird is the Word and Bobby Jones. They both have similar questions. Who is the next minor league pitcher to get a shot / next pitcher to make their major league debut? I'll throw it back to Nick.
Debut, I'll take the low-hanging fruit here and say Cade Stroud, just because he's on the 40-man already. We saw him get called up, didn't make that appearance. So if something happens, they need a righty. I imagine it would be him. Another pitcher to get a shot. I mentioned him before. I don't remember what episode we talked about this, but I mentioned the name before, and he's healthy now. But I'm going to say Levi Stout gets a shot. If you're looking at spring training numbers from this year, so he was sitting 95, elite IVB numbers, like close to 20 inches, I believe. Mid-80 slider, 10 plus miles of separation between the fastball and changeup, more than 6.5 feet of extension. Stuff plus numbers were fastball 103, slider 116, changeup 103. And if you compare, that's just 3 innings, but if you compare those to his AAA from last year, about 10 points up across the board there in like stuff plus numbers, and about 2 miles per hour in velo. So I don't know. He started the minor league season on the IL, but returned this past weekend. He made a rehab outing in Aberdeen, as like 18 other pitchers did as well, it seemed like. Scoreless inning with a strikeout. So he's not on the 40-man. Andrew Kitcher just coming back because he also just had a rehab appearance in Aberdeen. Colin Selby and Cade Stroud are righties on the 40-man already, so I imagine Stout might be down the pecking order a little bit, but I think he's going to get a shot at some point.
Yeah, I think Stout is a potential dude for sure. Looking for the guy who I'm very high on right now, Yaramil Geraldo, 29 years old in AAA. Now, I think he is legit going to be the next big find for the Orioles out of the bullpen. His stuff is fantastic. Can't wait to see him get a shot, but it also could be Chase McDermott. He's back. He's in AAA. He threw 4 scoreless innings the last time out, maybe 3, I can't remember. But if he's going to be healthy and full go, there's between him and Brandon Young. I mean, if you need a starter, who else are you going to call? Probably not Trevor Rogers just yet, who's still struggling a bit down there in AAA. Also think Nick just mentioned him, Carlos Tavera. He looks pretty solid out of the AAA bullpen, but Cade Stroud's also an easy answer. So plenty of options to choose from. And I think we're here for any and all major league debuts. That's for sure.
Yeah, Stroud is the easy option and probably correct one. If I had to pick out of that mix of starters who could make their debut or who could join the major league team next, not make their debut, I would go with McDermott. And the one thing that jumps out at me with McDermott is that he would give this pitching staff what it has lacked all season, which, any sort of quality would be helpful, but he can actually miss bats. And that was something that kind of stood out even going into the season about the Orioles 1 through 5 when we knew Grayson Rodriguez wasn't going to be healthy on opening days. You really don't have a strikeout pitcher in here. Zach Eflin, his best, is going to get a lot of ground balls and not walk anybody. He's a very good pitcher, but he doesn't strike people out at a high rate. McDermott can do that. He's shown that time and time again in the minor leagues. So if you want to shake things up a little bit and you want to get the guy that can actually put hitters away and pile up the strikeouts and not have to rely on the defense as much, McDermott is your answer. I'll go now to this question from John Botwright, and it's another Brandon Hyde question. Who is the best person to replace Hyde as manager, and why would he have better results than Hyde? And Bob, since you mentioned the name in our last show, I'm going to go back to you for this one.
I just think Buck Britton is right there. I think he's been groomed for this. I think the players love him. The front office love him. I've said this before. Like, he's not a guy that's like, oh, he's just what did the person that makes stuff up on Twitter and Blue Sky say? Like, he's not just the older brother of the players and they're not going to listen to him. No, this is a guy who's not afraid to get on these guys and tell them when they're doing stuff wrong. They respect him. They love him. The front office loves him. I think it would be him, but I guess I don't think you're going to pull in anyone from the outside in the middle of a season. So, and I certainly don't think you're going to give it to Chiernos, who, I mean, I think it's cool that he's on the staff. Like, I think that's cool. Give him a shot as the bench coach, but he cannot be the guy that's just going to hop into the managerial role. So I just think it's Buck Britton, plain and simple. So
I tend to agree. I honestly, like, the manager talk, I don't know. We don't know that the grass is going to be greener on the other side, right? I'm gonna pull out that cliche. We don't know if firing Hyde is going to spark something. It could be the nail in the coffin to that clubhouse. We don't know. According to Jacob Calvin-Meyer, these guys love him. I don't know, and I'm sure they do. Like, I love Brandon Hyde, honestly. Like, he was there during dark times, but yeah, he's kind of driving everybody crazy right now with a lot of these decisions, and I think a lot of people would be satisfied if he was gone. As far as a replacement, though, like, yeah, I just go back to, I think I brought this up off air, I think, after a show. I just go back again to, because we're not in the clubhouse. We don't know these guys personally, these managers personally, at least. Like, I go back to that Nico Goodrum interview, and career journeyman, right? Small time MLB career there with the Tigers, but like, he's bounced around the league, but he's been in this game for a long time. He had more than a decade in professional baseball. And when he came on the show, again, one of the best interviews we've ever done, he had the praise he had for Buck Britton was enormous. And it was just really cool to hear the way he talked about Buck Britton and how he handled himself in his relationship with the players in that Norfolk clubhouse, and how, like, yeah, he's not buddy, but like, there was a lot of respect for Buck Britton in that clubhouse, and he wasn't going to sugarcoat it for these guys to help prepare them for the next level. And I just feel like a guy like Nico Goodrum, who's in his mid-30s, been around the block multiple times. Buck Britton has never been in the big leagues, didn't make it as a player, hasn't made it as a manager yet. Like, what? Like, Nico Goodrum can just be like, okay, sure, like, tell me when to hit. All right, I don't need to listen to anything you say. I'm out of here at the end of the year. But just the praise that he had for him, I think, spoke volumes to me. So I think, right, if you're going to make a move mid-season, it's, yeah, the easy choices right there.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I don't really think that there is another choice. You don't have a Terry Francona or a Bruce Bochy sitting out there, whereas that guy's going to the Hall of Fame one day, and we can bring him in now to turn this around. Let's do it. Joe Madden is not that guy. Joe Girardi is not that guy. It's going to be Buck Britton if there is a move in season. One thing that we hear about Britton, and Nico Goodrum talked about this in that interview, one thing we hear consistent about Britton is the lines of communication are always open and they are really strong. And if there has ever been a time where you need that, it is right now. And I'm not saying that Brandon Hyde isn't giving it to them, because I don't know, without being in the clubhouse, what that dynamic is like. But if there's ever been a time where you really need a strong communicator, it's right now.
Agreed. I think this question came from Billy, and he wants to know, are any of us switching to Masson Plus?
No, but I'm not ruling it out eventually. Let's let them continue to iron out the kinks and get it where you're not 3 innings behind on the stream. And yeah, maybe eventually, but I'll wait until people say it's worth getting before I consider it.
Ideally, yes, because DirecTV Stream is kind of expensive. So it'd be nice to have a lower cost alternative, but I agree with Bob. I'm not going to rush in. And I have to give Billy B some credit here. Sometimes when he asks a mailbag question, it's like, who's going to be the opening day starter in 2085? Like, I don't have an answer for that, but I do have an answer for this. So good job, Billy B.
Yeah, I'm not giving money to Masson. Shout out to my parents for their DirecTV Stream password. I'll just keep using that.
I also share a DirecTV Stream password with somebody. So yeah,
this is not And it's not an ad at all because DirecTV stream is god awful.
It's not
and
great, and it's expensive. Yeah.
I don't want their sponsorship, but it's free 99, so I'm not complaining.
Free night. Nice. Yeah. Brady Jones, not related to Bobby as far as I'm concerned, or as I know, even though my name's Bobby, kind of, and my son's name's Brady. Weird. Go to ballpark food or snack item. He always buys peanuts every game. What do you say, Zach? You go to a lot of games.
Sometimes when I go to a game, I'm just in the mood for a really good soft pretzel. And I know at one point the Orioles had those soft pretzels that were shaped like O's. I don't know if they still have them. I haven't seen them in a while. But those were pretty good. So that's probably my go-to snack.
I honestly rarely ever eat at a ballpark, and I live so far away from like all professional baseball that I so rarely get to go to games. It's a fun adventure, it's a fun trip, and so I like enjoying that new city or even Baltimore. Like I might get to Baltimore once a year, and so there's so many. I love good food, I love good beer, and so my wife and I are like, let's find a restaurant we haven't been to. Or if we're in a new city, let's find a cool, fun brewery downtown and have dinner before the game. So I usually eat before the game, and then I'm just drinking at the games. I will pay your overpriced for local craft beer at a game. Not drinking your Miller Lights or anything like that. I will happily pay all of my food fund and use that for beer at games.
I do like a good soft pretzel with some mustard on it, but I think I typically will get like the chicken tenders and fries, and then I'll get Cracker Jack as my stereotypical snack afterwards after eating the meal. But if you are looking for a nice bar downtown to go to before or after a game, Zach?
That's exactly right. We are now into the final segment, brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridley Street, not far from Oriole Park, Camden Yards. It makes a perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink. And with the Orioles out of town all week this week, it would be a good time to go in there and just watch a game. Not to mention, I just talked about pretzels a minute ago. Very good pretzel bites there from the kitchen out of Checker Spot. So get some food while you're there too. And we'll go in now to this final question, which comes from Bobby Jones. Who makes their debut first, Dylan Beavers or Judd Fabian? I will start with Nick.
Can confirm the pretzel bites are great Checker Spots, but I think it's got to be Dylan Beavers, and mainly just because like, Cedric Mullins is still on this roster right now. Ramon Laureano is here. Dylan Carlson is here. Like, there's really no need for like a center fielder like Fabian is. Fabian is also a right-handed hitter, and we just talked about Kobe Mayo. You're not going to get the at-bats. Dylan Beavers, there's more of a path being that lefty. And Beavers is just knocking the cover off the ball. I'm sure, Bob, you've got the numbers handy, and can talk about his recent stretch there. I don't have them right here in front of me. They're unbelievable. And so I think it should be rewarded. And honestly, like, give the man a shot at some point this year. I hope he does. I hope it's here in Baltimore, because the man, I don't know if I'm going to go as far as Vivek does and say he's Kyle Tucker light, but I have certainly been hopeful that Dylan Beavers can turn this thing around and finally have it click for him. And I truly hope we are actually seeing that right now and at the AAA level.
Yeah, I thought for sure Judd Fabian would be the answer to this until pretty recently. Yeah, Dylan Beavers, thank God the Orioles didn't throw him in every trade offer they made over the last year and a half, like a lot of people, including myself, have been. Because, man alive, yes. Like I said earlier, I can't remember if it was the first mailbag episode or this one, but I would honestly send Heston Kjerstad down to AAA for a little bit and give Dylan Beavers a shot, because he started off the season in the first week and a half, first two series, striking out 47.2% of the time, one extra base hit, hitting 161, 444 OPS, first 36 plate appearances. Since then, since April 8th, he is now hitting 356 with a 996 OPS, which is a 174 WRC plus. That is over 92 plate appearances, a 16.3% walk rate, went from 47.2% strikeout rate to a 13% strikeout rate since April 8th, and a 6.1% strikeout rate over his last 49 plate appearances. what? 178 ISO in that time. So whatever adjustment he made, it's working, and it's working really well.
Yeah, I'm of the same mindset as Bob. If you had asked me this question before the season, or even as the season was starting, I would have said Jud Fabian, because both are, offensive prospects with very real questions about their bat. So when you're looking at that situation, you go with a guy that can play center field, which is Fabian. But Beavers, I think, has moved ahead of Fabian a little bit because of how he's performed at the plate. And like Nick said, the Orioles have enough options in center field right now. They don't have to consider center field defense when they bring somebody up. Cedric Mullins is in the middle of a very good season. Ramon Laureano has been used way more than I think the Orioles plan to use him, but he's a serviceable option in center field. And you do have Dylan Carlson around. So I think Beavers would be first up. And with that, that does it for this week. So we might have a bonus show for you later on this week. Keep an eye out on our social media channels, of which there are many, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up to become a member today. You can join at the $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list, the first of which for this season dropped this week. You're not going to want to miss that. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You're listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS ConsumerAccess.org, number 3030.